Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DiCerbo. The most fascinating podcast in the world has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the people that agree to talk to me. Today, I have a very fascinating, and I will say very humble, when I've talked to him in the past, gentleman Frank Famiano. Frank grew up in Schenectady, New York. I always remember him because I was a wrestler when he was a wrestler, but I'm younger. And I always looked up to him and the other people that he trained with at the Adirondack Three-Style Wrestling Association, otherwise known as ATWA. Frank is not only a wrestler and has wrestled in high school and college and on the world stage. He is an entrepreneur and has a couple businesses that he runs. He's a family man and he's a great friend. I happen to know from a friend in common, John Paracella, that he and a group of friends got together recently at Brockport State University for a reunion of sorts. I thought we might talk about that today as well. Well, welcome, Frank. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to hear you. Nice to see you guys.
My pleasure. So as you may recall, I'm in the habit of asking about people's earliest memories from childhood. And I just wondered, what do you remember as a little kid? What are your earliest memories growing up?
I just remember wanting to be an athlete. I didn't know what sport. Actually, I wanted to be a basketball player, and football, but I was too small. I did play, but I ended up going into the wrestling, and that was probably the best thing I ever did. But I just like hanging out with my buddies and playing football in the street and just wanting to make it when I get older. I didn't want to go through what my grandfather, who raised me, worked 35 years at GE. And then when he retired, he only had a few years left and then he passed. So I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to have time to do whatever I wanted to do.
Mm. So when you were a little kid, were you living with your grandfather at that point, say 5 years old or 6
Yeah, when
years
I
old?
was like 1 or 2 years old, my grandfather adopted me and my sister. And then he lured me into roller skating with my sister at a young age. So I was a roller skater. I was her first partner. And then I decided I can't do this anymore. I needed something else. So she went on and became a two-time world champion. And I went into baseball and then wrestling.
What was your sister's name?
Angela.
And
Actually, she was at the World Championships the same time I was at the Olympic Games.
oh
The
my
same
gosh.
weekend. It was crazy.
So your grandfather didn't know which direction to go.
Well, yeah, he came to the Olympics.
That's
Him and
awesome.
all his brothers. But my sister skated with David Golub. You know,
Yeah,
that's a big name in Schenectady for the grocery stores.
no
Good
doubt.
guy.
For people who don't know, the Golub family is the founder and owners, I think, of Price Chopper Supermarkets and the Golub Corporation and Market 32 in the Schenectady, Albany area. So what were the circumstances, do you mind if I ask, that your grandfather adopted you?
Well, my father was in the Navy and married a young lady. And when he was still in the Navy, he came back home and he couldn't take care of us. So he lived next door. My grandfather adopted me and my sister. And then my father got married a couple more times, kids each time. It just got crazy. And my grandfather just said, "Hey, I'll take you." Because he was older and he was by himself. So it ended up he was taking care of us and then we took care of him until he passed. It was a great relationship. If it wasn't for him, I don't know what I would have done or my sister. So he was a great man. He old Italian, and just just did everything for us. So it was great.
You seem like you're super well-adjusted person every time I talk to you. Like, do you feel like any anger or anything like that towards your dad for the way that things
Absolutely
turned
not.
out? Okay.
No, absolutely not. I mean, everybody has issues, and just how you deal with it. I mean, he came to watch me wrestle my senior year in high school at the New York State Championship. That was the very first time he seen me wrestle.
Mm.
And then he came to the Olympic Games. So it was, people have other things they have to deal with. I mean, it's not all about me. It's about they have to get through their challenges. And he had challenges, and we ended up being basically friends because he lived separately, and had his separate lives, and it happens. And I loved him until he died, but you know, you can't look back at the bad. You got to look at the positive stuff.
Amen. I love it. So you're a little kid, you're playing in the street and whatnot, and you want to play, did you say football and baseball? Basketball and
Yeah.
baseball, you said.
Art Kranick was actually my freshman football coach. I was an eighth grader playing football. I was the smallest guy on the team. It was crazy. I can't believe. I just wanted to be in something, and then I went into wrestling. A crazy way how I went into wrestling, but
so Art
it worked
Kranick,
out.
before he became a world famous track and cross country coach, was a football coach?
Absolutely, he was a JV football coach at Draper. He ended up being a assistant track coach, and then he was assistant varsity football coach. And he was amazing. He just very motivational. He never was able to do what he wanted to do because he was always under somebody else. But I knew he had the potential to be the one of the best coaches in the country, no matter what he was going to do. And that's where he went with his wife, and they started that program at Saratoga, one of the greatest cross country coaches around.
Amazing. So you had a funny story. You said something like he told you you had no future in football and that you needed to do something else.
Yeah, he told me he put me out in front of the team, and he says, "How much do you weigh?" I weighed 89 pounds. He goes, "You're one of the toughest guys in here, and you try the hardest." He goes, "You're going to do something good someday down the, whatever you do, just keep doing it." And I remembered that, and that's when I went into wrestling. But there was a crazy way how I went into wrestling. If it wasn't for my high school coach, I would have never wrestled. It's a funny story. I don't know if you want to hear that story.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I'm trying out for the freshman basketball team, and hit the high school wrestling coach was best friends with this freshman basketball coach. And Doug Jones was the high school coach, and he said, "I need a 91 pounder. I need your guy. You have to cut this guy because then I'll get him on the wrestling team." So I got cut from the freshman team, which I would have made basketball because I was decent, pretty good at basketball because I hustled, and we used to play every day in my backyard, all my buddies. But then he says, "You have to cut this guy, and I'll get him on the wrestling team." So I did get cut, and then the high school coach was my health teacher, and he said, "I'll fail if I don't go on the wrestling team." And he said, "All you got to do is you'll make varsity because if you're 91 pounds, you'll get 2 forfeits, and that'll be 2 wins, and you'll get your varsity letter." I said, "That's cool. Have a varsity letter as a freshman, and we'll get that patch, and you walk around, you're on a varsity." That's why I did it. It was amazing how I did it. Never did it before. Just walked on, and it was a really amazing story.
That is unbelievable. That Doug Jones is wily.
He only coached for 4 years. My first year at Draper, and he was done after my senior year. But then he went on to Mahonison and coached modified wrestling, which really helped that program. And he's such a great guy. I mean, he coached baseball at Scotia, and we're still friends to this day. And I always thank him. I
How's he
call him
doing?
up there, and he's doing awesome. He got me involved in high school officiating, wrestling, because he did that, and he helped me like get to be an official, and I thank him for that. I call him up every time the NCAA championship's on, and I thank him for getting me involved in wrestling because I would have never been in that tournament if it wasn't for him.
That's awesome. So I didn't know him at all, and I really don't know him, but he reffed when I was in high school, and then I saw, didn't he have a brother?
Yeah.
Did he have a brother?
Mark Jones. He was good. He was a good guy also.
And,
good wrestler.
they owned a company, maybe a plumbing business or something. I can't remember what they
Yes,
did
he
for a
owned a
living.
plumbing business, and Doug ended up coaching or teaching at high school. And then
Okay.
when he retired, he substitute taught.
Just
I used to,
quiet
I sub.
leaders.
Oh yeah, he never wrestled. And some of the best coaches never wrestle. They just know
Hmm.
how to handle kids. They know how to motivate young adults. That's why I tried to be a coach and I wasn't a good coach. I couldn't
Mm.
do it. It's just you have to be a special type of person to be a coach. I can teach wrestling, but I can't coach it. It's not me.
Mm. That's fascinating. This is a little bit of an aside, but I say the same thing in like sales profession. Like if you know a good salesperson in business, like a lot of people think that a good salesperson can be a manager and manage other salespeople, and it's almost never works. What
Absolutely.
makes the salesman great is not what's needed in management for the most part. Not unlike
Yep.
what you just said. So my coach, Greg Burbulis, he went to Burn Hills and he was in track and football, never wrestled and never coached wrestling until he got to Galway. And there was an opening and he didn't have any kids. And he was like, all right, I'll, I'll coach the wrestling team. And he produced, like my senior year, we were undefeated. And he produced some really great teams. We weren't the best wrestlers, but we were really well conditioned. And he convinced us that we could win. And in general, we did win. It's unbelievable.
Winning isn't really how great you are. It's
Mm.
how you believe and stay together as a group and push each other to be the best you can be. All people think that you need all these crazy things to win. No, you need the drive and you need a reason why you need to win.
Mm. When you look back and think about why you wanted to win, like, can you describe a reason? Like, do you know why you wanted to win?
Absolutely. I believed if I started, I need to finish. The finish line was the farthest you could go, which was the Olympic team. I never thought I would be on an Olympic team. I thought I had a chance to make an Olympic team if I took the right path. And I believe that if you stay around people who are Olympians or are on the same path, you have a chance of making it. The year I made the Olympic team, I probably wasn't the best guy but I won because I believed I had to win. The times I lost in the Olympic trials, I was the best guy. Just things happen. Uh, your belief, you kind of get lazy after you win. It's harder to stay on top than it is to start from the bottom. When you're hungry going after the number one guy, it's a lot easier than being on the top when they're all chasing you. And I believe I developed my guys that beat me, were my training partners at the national team. And I basically trained them to beat me. They got better because they trained with me and I got older. They were growing up, getting stronger. And it was just a matter of time. The changing of the guard is a real thing in every sport, and you can only stay on top for so long and you can only stay hungry for so long.
Mm.
Any given weekend, there's going to be a different champion. I believe that in every sport, usually.
Mm. So you start as a 91 pounder in high school. You have this coach who never wrestled. What do you remember from ninth grade?
I remember that I was scared, but I had some seniors on the team who said, "This is what you got to do. You got to, I was a good athlete. So being a good athlete helps you in any sport. So I was very aggressive, but I used to have a book that showed you how to wrestle. And I would put it on the side of the mat. And I said, let me try this move. And I turn the page and I try it. I said, oh, that one might work. So I put that in my arsenal of tricks. But I don't know. I was just a scrappy kid. I grew up on the street and I was just didn't accept. I didn't want to be embarrassed out there. You're out there by yourself going against another guy. It's embarrassing to get losing, getting pinned or beat up, and you're like, okay, this isn't fun, and then you quit. That's what happens to the majority of kids. But I knew that my coach just said, hang in there. The problem is I started like 10-0 as a freshman. So I was like, oh, this is easy. And then I came across my first loss and I was not that happy.
Do you remember who it
And
was?
I think it was a guy from Linton. Doug Jones moved me up a weight and I lost like 4-0. And I was like, okay, this is the real deal. And then, I went on and my first year in the Section 2 tournament, which is the qualifier for the states, I had this guy, Joe Masso, and he was like a beast. He was from Amsterdam. And I lost 20-2 the first round. And I sat on the side of the match and watched him in the finals. And I said to my guys, I said, I will be in this next year. I will be in this finals next year.
Mm.
Now, I said it, but I didn't know if I was going to do it. And from then on, I was I won it the next 3 years
Oh my gosh.
because I said, I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the technique, but I knew I could do it because it wasn't that hard.
So you made
And
the States in New York 3 times as a sophomore, junior, and senior?
correct. My freshman year, I was like 20-11. And then the next 3 years, I didn't lose in Section 2.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't have a loss. And I knew it. I knew I was going to win. I told Doug Jones, I'm coming back to this tournament and I'm not going to be embarrassed like I was. I mean, it was embarrassing getting beat 20-2. They didn't have technical falls, and all the stuff. I said, I don't want to be embarrassed. And then my high school career wasn't as good when I went to the state tournament because I didn't have the belief. I was cutting a lot of weight and it was embarrassing. I remember my sophomore year, I went to the States. I lost to a kid in the first round from Section 2 went to Spencerport, and I got caught in a cradle and I got pinned. And then he ended up losing the next round, so I was out because back then your guy had to make it to the finals. And I was so embarrassed. I was representing Section 2. I was representing all my weight class, and I go out there and get pinned in the first period. I got caught. And I remember saying to the coaches who were representing Section 2, I apologized. I said, this is embarrassing. I'm sorry that I lost. It's not going to happen again. And then, it was it was so embarrassing. And my whole story comes down to the New York State Championship, never winning a New York State Championship. And I was probably good enough to it, but I never did. There was always these circumstances that came up. And I had a chip on my shoulder going into college saying, give me all the state champs that you can give me. I'll wrestle any one of them.
Mm.
And that's why I did so well. I was always embarrassed of Section 2. I represented, it's like representing your country when you go to the Olympics. I was representing Section 2. Everybody wants to go to that state tournament. Back then, only one guy went. There was one division. And you win, and then you go there and you don't do anything. And that's so embarrassing as an athlete. And to me, that was the most embarrassing thing. Because when I was a sophomore in high school, I was second in the world for my age group. So, I was on the big stage, but I never could. New York State tournament was always my menace.
So you ended up somehow going to Brockport. How did that happen?
I met this guy, Don Murray, when me, Andy Saris, and Joel Feingold would go to the Shippensburg tournament in Pennsylvania. And Murray was there recruiting, and he says, you're going to go to Brockport. Now, I'm a sophomore in high school. I don't even know what college is. He says, I want you to come to Brockport. I said, yeah, okay. Who is this guy? And me and Andy would laugh. And, I said, I'm going big time. I'm going to Iowa. I'm going somewhere. I'm going to get Division I scholarship. And it never ended up I never ended up getting an offer because I didn't place number 1 in New York State. So now I don't even know what I'm going to do. So I'm Joe DeMille, it was in 1980. The Olympics were going to happen. He says, why don't you take an Olympic year off? So you don't have to go to college. You take that Olympic year and you train for the Olympics and then go back the next year. But this Don Murray came to me and said, hey, I need a guy. He said, I guarantee you'll start at 118 and we took second last year. We lost by a half a point. If you come and you score, we'll win. We'll win the Division III. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go. I don't even know where Brockport is. I never heard of it. So he says, all right. So 2 weeks before school starts, he says, I don't have a guy. I need you to come. He says, I already got your classes. I got this. I said, okay. So I show up at Brockport, and that's how I started. And I didn't even know where it was. John Paracella and Woody Vandenberg were there, and they told me, they kind of recruited me and says, hey, we want you to come here. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And I had, I didn't have any money, so I got private aid, like, the grants and stuff. So I didn't cost, it wasn't costing me anything because I was very poor back then. And it was good. I just walked right in and I had a place to stay. And I remember the guys were my first roommates. Um, and then I got to my first practice, and there's 7 guys in my weight class. I'm like, I thought you said I was going to start. Murray goes, oh, don't worry, we're going to have a tournament, and the winner of that tournament will be the starter. And he knew I was going to beat these guys. They were good, but they weren't, great. They weren't like All-Americans or nothing like that. So I ended up starting as a freshman, which was the best move I ever made.
Mm.
But there's a lot of stories about Brockport that nobody knows, and I started telling the stories of my journey at Brockport.
How do you mean?
Well, when I went there, I never thought I would even make the team because a couple of my idols who went there, John DeMeo, uh, there was uh, other guys that went there that were like my idols. They were way better than me in high school, and they ended up doing nothing there. Like not on, they couldn't make the team or they never were an All-American. I said, how can I go here? I don't want to sit the bench. I'm not going there for 4 years to ride the bench. And I was scared, very scared. But it ended up working out because it was a perfect program for me. It was, no pressure. If there was no wrestle offs ever. He picked the guys who were going to be in there. So, but
how did you feel about no wrestle offs?
It's all right if you're number one, but if you're number 2 or 3, I don't know how it worked out. It was, you knew who the number 1 guy was. Yeah. Number 2 and number 3 just wanted to be participate.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very interesting how it worked out.
So your grandfather was hugely transformational in your life, and it sounds to me
Absolutely.
like Coach Murray was too.
Coach Murray, the 3 coaches I had in my life were life-changing. Mm-hmm. Doug Jones, who started the process, who kept me going. He'd pick me up at my house, bring me to practice and stuff, because our practice facility was not at the school. It was like 3, 4, 5 miles away from our school. So during the wintertime, it's hard to get there. He'd pick us up and drive us over to this facility we had. And my international coach, which is Joe DeMille, was like a dad to me. And Coach Murray was also like a dad to me. Murray was probably the biggest influence of my life, not only wrestling, but discipline-wise. He was like a general in the Army. It was that tough there.
And although he wasn't your coach directly for most of your athletic career, sounds like Coach Kranick made a huge impression as well.
Absolutely. He was like chiseled out of stone. He would make us, lift weights, and he would be, in the summertime rollerblading around the school outside, and in the wintertime doing his cross-country skiing, and no one ever heard of that in a small school. Who would do that,
Mm-hmm.
But he was just, he was disciplined, very disciplined.
So interesting. So while you're at Brockport, simultaneously you're training with Joe DeMeo, the Greco-Roman and freestyle coach in Schenectady. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we would practice at Albany State,
Okay.
but Joe was coaching Albany State at the time, and we were in the same conference. And it was
Okay.
kind of hard. Joe would actually coach me and help me when I didn't wrestle his guy. And you know what's crazy? Every time I go to a tournament, I'd have his guy first. I'm like, here we go. I got to wrestle Joe's guy. But Joe would be like when we went to Division III championship or New York State champion, college championship, and Division I, he would be, telling me what to do, helping me out like Murray would. Joe was more technical. Murray was more preparation.
Mm,
Like Murray was not a great wrestler, but he knew how to get you to the peak of your, where you had to be.
mm,
And Joe was more technical. He'd tell you, watch this, do that. So they both hand in hand. They were competitors, Joe and Murray, coaching wise, but they would help each other with their wrestlers.
mm. So you were as a freshman. Were you an All-American as a freshman? Division
Yeah.
III?
Yeah. I lost to the national champ in overtime the first time I wrestled him.
Mm-hmm.
He happened to be in my conference. He was in the SUNY conference. He was from Buffalo, UB. This guy was like,
What was his
he
name?
must have been like 26 years old. Jacato, good name of wrestling, out of Jersey. And I lost to him in the semifinals of the SUNYAC championship. It's funny because we sent 9 guys to the tournament. I took third, everybody else won. So I was
Mm,
the only guy that didn't win. I tell that story to the wrestlers now. I was the worst guy on the team as a
mm,
freshman because everybody won and I took third. But I broke through as a freshman. I was the highlight of my career as being an All-American. I wanted to be so bad an All-American because I knew how many guys never got to that All-American status on the
mm.
wall. Brockport has a wall of fame of All-Americans, and I wanted to be up there so bad. And once you break through, that's what I try to teach these younger kids. Then it's easy after that. It's like when you make your first million, the second's easy. It's true. It
So
really is.
so you became an All-American as a freshman?
Yes. Yeah.
What place did you got in the NCAA tournament, Division III? What place did you get in that tournament
I
as
think
a
I took
freshman?
seventh or sixth or something. That's the
Okay.
first year they added the top 8.
Okay.
But I don't know. It was one of those things where I just had to score.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I had to do for the team. I, but I wanted to be an All American. I was cutting so much weight. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was really, really hurting, and I couldn't wait till the following year to get up a weight class because 118 was just too low for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wore on you because in college you start up high, and then by the NCAAs you go down to scratch weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's brutal, and they're
Mm-hmm.
changing it every year now to make sure athletes don't hurt themselves in cutting weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the
So
Olympic weight I wrestled at. I won more titles up a weight than I did at my Olympic weight.
that's interesting testimony for sure. There's such a debate about it, right?
Yeah, I mean most guys don't lose because of their athletic ability. They lose because of preparation of what's happening around them, whether it's you're living your life with your family, you're cutting weight, or you're working. I mean, that's why Americans some of the best guys that are the best in the world aren't competing. It's
Mm-hmm.
not always the best guy that wins, it's the guy that shows up. And
Mm,
under circumstances, like I tell some of my teammates, the only reason why I won is because I kept going. You could have probably
mm,
done the same thing I did, but under circumstances, you either had to live life and make it through your life, or you have a choice. You sacrifice your life to wrestle, or you have a life and don't wrestle.
mm,
And that's the reason why people don't keep going.
mm-hmm. So your sophomore year, how did you do that year?
I took fourth. I
Mm-hmm.
lost to the same guy twice.
Mm,
He was from Minnesota, and he was just hard to wrestle, and he had my number. I had him in the quarterfinals, then I had him in the finals for third and fourth, and lost both times.
mm.
I was so disgusted. And then the next year, I had him in the finals, and I'm like, oh boy, I got this guy again. And I said, I can't lose this match. I can't lose this guy 3 times. And it's funny because the guy probably thought, "Oh, I'm going to win this match. I beat him twice last year."
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I ended up beating him that year, and it was tough. He was good.
What do you remember about that match when you became an NCAA
I
champion?
just remember I can't lose because it was at Cortland. I said,
Mm.
"There's no way I can't lose this. You get to the finals and you lose. It's a devastating thing, and you can talk to John Paracel about that. You
Mm-hmm.
get that far, and yet you lose, and you can't. There's nothing else you can do because it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the guys in the finals are probably just as good as each other, and just one thing changes, and that guy wins.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I headlocked the guy, and I ended up getting the points I needed to win the match, but I wasn't gonna not win.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how it works out. When you tell yourself you're gonna win, you usually do.
Mm-hmm.
Usually do. And I tell
And
people the story is the reason why I won in wrestling in college is I did something different that nobody else did. Anybody can do single leg takedowns, double leg takedowns, you know, on tops or whatever, but nobody knows how to stop upper body wrestling because they're
mm,
not trained it. And if you get a guy that goes out there and you're going to wrestle a guy that throws and he's a master at it, you're going to be on the defense and you're going to take yourself out of the offense. And I tell people that these winners that win the Division I championships are doing something different. Whether it's Jordan Burroughs, who has an awesome double leg takedown, John Smith has this low single. They have something different that nobody else can do. And that's why they break through and win these tournaments. The
mm,
funk guy that used to do the funk wrestling, they're doing something different because everybody, you know, can do everything else. It's not a tough sport. You have so many moves and they don't change throughout the year. It's just that somebody does it a little bit different. I mean, you wrestled, you know what I'm talking about in the sense of you have to have something different that's going to break you through. And
mm-hmm.
I did, and I never shot a takedown in college, period.
All upper
People
body.
don't, all upper body and defense. Nobody doesn't understand. How could you not shoot a takedown? Well, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew how to wrestle upper body and I was confident. And I teach that. And I showed that when my son wrestled 1 year in high school in Florida. I showed him how to wrestle upper body and he prevailed really good because nobody else could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's going to show it to him because you know, they don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Wrestling is the toughest sport out there. You can't teach toughness. If you bring in an athlete, you could teach him basics and he'll be very good at it.
So the Division III championships you win, that means you get to go to the Division I tournament, right?
Absolutely.
And what was that like?
First of all, you're going basically by yourself because your team is already partying like rock stars. It's springtime and they're happy the season's over. Now you're going by yourself into a territory where every other team has 10 or 11 guys. I'm like one or two. We brought two guys, maybe three. And there's nobody to train with, work out with. You get there. We had to drive. It was at Iowa State. We had to drive from Brockport to Iowa State. We didn't fly. It was like 2 days to get there. We get there, and there's no fans whatsoever for my team. You're by yourself. It's like going to an international tournament. So I was okay in the sense of I was going to be okay because I knew most of the people there because a lot of them wrestle internationally. They're freestyle or the coaches. I knew them all.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the very first guy I had to wrestle. Jeff Blatnick was the coach of this kid. And I'm
Mm.
like, oh, here we go. Jeff knows everything I do. He was coaching at North Dakota State. And I got his guy first round. And I got ahead and then I ended up holding on and winning. So, but the first match was the hardest because there's 50,000 people there at
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State. And I remember warming up and I had a nosebleed. I was so nervous. My nose started bleeding. I'm like, this ain't cool. So I got through that and I ended up getting in the quarterfinals. I had the Division I champion and I was ahead 6-1 going into the third period.
Who
And I
was
ended
it?
up losing the match. Huh?
Who was it? Do you
Questis.
remember?
Dan Questis. He was a two-time NCAA champ.
Oh
He
my
might have even, yeah,
gosh.
two-time. I'm beating him 6-1. I had him stuck too because I threw him.
Mm.
And even the ref admitted it like 10 years later that he should have called it, but I was a Division III guy and he didn't call it. And everybody
Wow.
talked about it because I had the guy railed. And then I ran out of gas with this guy. And ended up going into overtime. And in overtime riding time, once you get over a minute, you get a point. Well, this guy had 101 riding time and I lost 7-6. And I was so happy that I didn't get crushed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to have an embarrassment. And I remember coming off the mat, I'm so happy. Oh, that was a great match. And Murray yelled at me, my coach, from one end of the gym to the locker room. He's yelling at me all the way into
Mm.
the locker room. And he goes, "What's wrong with you? You could have won that match. You just didn't believe you could win. And you came here. You got to win." And I'm sitting there saying, "Coach, I just gave my best effort." He says, "But you could have won." And I sat there and I said, "He's right. He is absolutely right. I am as good as these guys." And I came out, and I think the next round I had a guy who was second in the NCAAs in the wrestlebacks the year before, and I beat him. Dave Cook from North Carolina. I still remember he was a beast. And I went through and I wrestled a guy from Lehigh, Pecori, all these guys, and I ended up placing because I said, "That's he's right. I can do it." And the hardest round is the blood round. The round where if you win, you're an All-American. If you lose, you're out. It's the toughest round. And I remember having a guy from Army who, Mark Paulzer, I still remember, he was at West Point. He ended up going to the New York State Championship and beating Paul Giamatti, who was a stud from Section 2. And he was my idol. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can beat this guy. But I ended up beating him I pinned him, I think, or something. And I ended up being All-American. From there, it was just easy. Then you know, to be an All-American Division I is very hard. I mean, every match was close, and like any given day, it could be a different outcome. Usually, the number one or two will be the same, but through the wrestlebacks, it could change drastically. You know, so I was proud that I did it, and I brought it back and to Brockport. It was probably one of the best. No one's ever done it. And I was representing New York State, which was funny because all my teammates like Mark DeMille, Mike Enzi, and all these guys were wrestling in that tournament, and they were out of it already. And I felt like I was representing them. I was proud to be a Section 2 guy, being an All-American, because there's only been a handful of Section 2 guys that have placed in Division One. And after that, a lot of guys started breaking through because they would say, "Oh, Frank did it. Shit, we can do it." And Fraunhofer came through and Parker and all these guys. You know who I'm talking about, but a lot of these guys don't know. We're all Section 2 guys that were good enough, but probably didn't believe they could do it until somebody actually broke through. I mean, Jeff Blatnick, I believed he did it. He did it, so I could do it. But he was in a little bit different outcome. He's wrestling guys 400 pounds back then, unlimited. The heavyweight was unlimited, and he would look like a stick man with these heavyweights. And then my senior was a different story. I don't know if you're going to go to that part, but
Sure.
that was different.
What happened?
Well, I was getting recruited by Syracuse because Gene Mills was gone, and they needed a 126 pounder, and they were trying to get me to go there because I was beating all their guys, and I couldn't do it because the loyalty of staying at Brockport with Murray. I says I'm not doing it. I mean, it'd be great to go to Syracuse and wrestle in the D1 program, but it wasn't me. It didn't. I didn't. I stayed with the loyalty. But then I'm wrestling through my senior year, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. Murray was riding me about wrestling one of my teammates too hard and stuff. I says, when I went into the room and up to his office and I had my bag, I said, "I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to strictly train Greco." And he says, "No, we need you. If you don't wrestle this year, we can't score enough points to win the NCAAs." He has come back tomorrow and think about it. So I thought about it and I said to myself, was it luck that I placed in Division One? Was it a fluke? And I said, I can't let my teammates down. I said, all these guys that are second and third teamers here that wrestle and never get in a match, I gotta be there for them because they. So I ended up going back to Murray's office. Said, all right, I'll do it. I'll finish the season off, and I went out and had a great season. It was Division I All-American again, and the rest. I'm glad I did it because I wasn't really sure whether I was going to be an All-American again because it's the toughest tournament in the world by far.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up making it to the quarterfinals, and then the wrestlebacks are like another tournament in itself. It's brutal, but I had another teammate who also was an All-American, Ron Winnie. He was from Chalmont High School, went to Spencerport, and he ended up being an All-American too. And there's a reason why he did become an All-American. And I tell kids who I went to Brockport a couple weeks ago and talked to the team, and I told them this story. I said, when you wrestle out there, most kids look at the uniform and, oh my God, I got a guy from Maryland. Oh, I got a guy from Iowa. I got a guy. The uniform doesn't matter. The guy in that uniform is the same as you. It's just they have a different uniform from a different school. And when Ron Winnie was a senior, Don Murray drove him to the Olympic Training Center and let him wrestle with the guys who are All-Americans and world champs and stuff. And Ron was hanging in there. And the confidence that gave him, the next year he went back and he became an All-American in Division I. And that was the main reason, because the belief that he was good enough to be side by side with these athletes. And I told these guys from Brockport a couple of weeks ago, I said, you have to believe you're going to win. Go this summer, go to a big event where there's guys that are All-Americans and just roll with them. And you'll see that the difference is they have a different uniform on. Wrestlers are wrestlers. You go out there, it's the same. The technique is the same. It's the belief. If you go to a Division III school, you think, oh, well, I'll never beat a guy from Division II or Division I. That's false. It's the same sport, just a different uniform. And once you believe that, you're going to be fine. And I don't know, Pat, you probably you've wrestled, so you understand what I'm talking about in the sense of, if you go in a bar and two guys are fighting, you don't say, well, this guy's from Iowa and this guy's from Brockport. You just want to it doesn't matter. It's two guys. So that was my motto. And even when I went into the Olympic competition, I got the Russian, I got this, I got that. Who cares? It's the same guy. And that's why we did so well in the 80s in Greco. We started breaking through with medals and stuff like that. And it's all it takes is just to train with these guys and realize that they're human beings.
So before we get to international competition, you didn't end up going to Syracuse, but you wrestled Gene Mills's brother, and then you wrestled Gene Mills in that order, right?
Yeah, I wrestled Gene, I think when I was a freshman or a sophomore. He was at his peak. He was a senior, and he was killing everybody. And I had to wrestle him the week of Thanksgiving. And we were supposed to have it canceled because of snow or something. I don't remember. But I ended up, it was at my home gym at Brockport, and it was packed. And I'm like, I had to suck down to make the weight, and I made it. And I went out and started wrestling. It was like 2-0 in the first period. The next thing you know, second period, I'm down 35-0 or something. Because back then they had this new rule where you can tilt and you can keep the same hold. You don't have to break the hold, so you could turn the guy 10 times. And once I got behind, I says, okay, now I'm not winning this match, so I'm going to learn and see what he does. So I kind of picked up what he did, and I started doing what he did and learned his technique, and I ended up using it in my favor for the next couple of years, and it was outstanding. He's such a good guy. Gene Mills is you look at him, he looks like nothing. All of a sudden he comes out and he has the heart of a lion, and he just goes after you and goes 7 minutes nonstop. He was the best wrestler in the world in 1980. And that's when I wrestled him. And I'm like, he was pinning everybody, but I didn't get pinned. But that's the only match I ever lost in college in a dual match. And
wow.
It was the greatest loss I ever had. Obviously nobody likes losing, but it was the greatest loss because I learned so much from it. And people said, well, aren't you embarrassed? No. everybody takes losses. You're never going to be, you know, undefeated forever. Somebody's always going to come up and get you.
Amen. He was ferocious. One year I went to wrestling camp at Brockport and Murray was running the camp. It was like a 2-week long camp. And towards the end of the second week, Gene Mills says, we're going to do a takedown tournament. He's like, I want 30 guys. And he lined people up from, say, 130 pounds to a heavyweight. And he said, it's all of you against me, one at a time. And he took down 30 guys in a row. And the guy at like 250, he didn't do it on purpose, I don't think, but the guy was tough. And Gene weighed like 140 pounds or something, 130 pounds, I don't know. And he ended up slapping the guy in the face because like it was just got very physical. And the guy was intimidated. He was just a kid, you know, the heavyweight. And Gene was like, I'm sorry, I just got caught up in a moment. But he took down 30 guys in a row.
Yeah, them are the things you remember. Some, you know, how amazing some wrestlers are. And you see that through wrestling, going to the UFC and all that stuff. And even if you lose to a guy like me and Gene are great friends.
Is that right?
Somebody's got to win or lose. You know, he was better than me. What's the difference if it was 50 points or 2 points? He was better than me. And he never wanted to wrestle me in Greco, though.
But. So you finish your college career. You're simultaneously, summers and stuff, Coach DeMio in Atwa. Then what happened?
We would travel to Europe. We train at Albany State, you know, every day, 2 times a day. When we got into heavy competition, we'd go 3 times a day. We'd watch videos and stuff, and we would travel around to different countries, and we would be like Atwa team. They'd think we were a country, but the goal was to everybody be on the national team and pursue our goal of being an Olympic champion or making an Olympic team. The problem with our team was we had so many good guys that you couldn't move weight classes because you didn't want to take the spot from your teammate. So I got stuck at 126, and I should have been up to 136, but Ike Anderson was there. And, you know, you grew up with these guys, and you basically stay where you're at and not really be chasing somebody else's weight class. But we ended up having eight Olympians on our team, 1 medal. You know, Sean Sheldon was 3-time Olympian. Andy was an Olympian. There was guys, Blatnick, Olympic champ. But we had the potential to have more guys, but we had some guys stuck in the same weight class. Like Jeff Clark was one of the best wrestlers. He was the very first youngest national team member. He was still in high school. He makes the national team and goes on to wrestle in Russia. He was getting bigger, so he was 114. So then he moved up to 126, and he couldn't beat me. But he was a great training partner, and eventually I should have been up to 36. Ike should have been up 49. Andy should have went up. We should all went up a weight, but we got stuck in these weight classes, and it was just tough.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like living with these guys. You know, we grew up together. Our lives for 15 years, we were wrestling together.
So do you remember the practices at Union College and the alumni gym?
Absolutely. That's in the beginning. When it first started, it was at Union College. Mike Paquette was there, and I'm not sure. There was a couple other guys, and we used to wrestle at Union College. I remember that.
Well, I just remember, you know, you guys were my idols, right? You're 4 years older than I am, I think. And I remember seeing Andy in there and wrestling. You know, I always looked up to him, and he was wrestling, I think, John Plasek one day. And I'm thinking, Plasek is really good. This is going to be close. And he was good, but Andy beat the crap out of him.
Yeah.
It was just
this technique, you know, it's so different in Greco-Roman because the technique makes huge difference of whether you're going to hang with a guy. Like I wrestled John Carty, you know, and he was 163, I think I wrestled him at, and I beat him, and his dad went crazy. He couldn't believe I beat him. I'm like, it's just technique. I mean, he's a tougher guy than me. Yeah, absolutely. But when technique comes into play, sometimes, you know, I don't care how big you are. That doesn't mean you're going to win. The
So
skill
you,
level. Joe used to bring us around to these tournaments around the country, for our age group, and we used to go there and just destroy people. And they said, "Where did these guys come from?"
it's
Well,
amazing.
he put us in the senior tournament as high schoolers, the U.S. Open as high schoolers, and we were wrestling these guys that are 30, 40 years old. 26 to 40 years old, and we're 15 years old. And he knew that we could hang with them, but we were going to lose to the really good guys, but we could hang, and that's how you develop, and that's how we ended up very good.
Mm-hmm. So how many between world teams and Olympic teams? How many world and Olympic team members did that program produce over the years?
Wow, I'd say we had to have up to 50 to 100.
Jeez.
50 to 100 between world team members, Olympic team, national championships. I mean, we would win the nationals as a small team almost every year. We just had that many guys. I mean, when I was a sophomore in high school, I think I took top three in the U.S. Open, and I never was lower than that for my whole career.
How many
So
years was that? Say from age 16 to
I
when you
stopped in 92. So from 1979, it's 1980, 79, 80 to 1992. I was never lower than third. I was usually one or two, no matter what weight class I was at, only because, you know, the training we had was phenomenal.
I feel like it was
We
just
were
this.
we were wrestling we were wrestling our own teammates in the finals if we went up a weight class. We were that
Mm-hmm.
good. And we were good in the United States. When we went to Europe, we got beat up a little bit. We couldn't push through because we just didn't have the training like they had. They grow up wrestling freestyle or Greco. We start at collegiate and get tough and good and then transform into it. We were lucky to have Joe DeMille because he only wanted to do Greco-Roman wrestling, and he started us when he came to Albany, New York, because he coached at Stanford. And then that's because we had no other. We didn't know what Greco was. He said, "Yeah, just we'll teach you how to do this." And then he'd bring in all these foreigners, and we'd have these dual meets against Egypt, Hungary, all these teams he would bring to Albany. We'd be wrestling, but thank God we didn't have to pay for everything. We had a lot of great sponsors in Albany, New York, and Schenectady who would put up money and send us to these tournaments, or otherwise we couldn't go. It was very expensive to go to Europe and all the tournaments. And we sacrificed a lot. A lot of us didn't have careers because we went to college and we kept wrestling. And when you're done wrestling, you're 20 some years old. Who wants to hire somebody 20, 30 years old when they can hire somebody that's just coming out of college? I mean, I remember I had my first job and they looked at my resume and said, "Oh, you're an Olympian? Okay, I'm hiring you." I wasn't even qualified. It was like mechanical engineers. It was like, okay. And I lasted maybe 6 months. I said, "I can't do this. I'm not qualified." No, I just like you. Just stay here. No, sorry, I'm done. But that's when I started my own stuff. But um,
How did you get started in your businesses?
I had my wife was an executive producer for news, and she wanted to go to a higher market, which was in Florida, and I was in Schenectady doing whatever I could to survive. You know, sometimes it's not about money; it's about enjoying your life. So I didn't know what I wanted to do because I didn't want to be a wrestling coach because I don't, where that goes. You,
Mm.
there's really no money into it, but you love it. So I went to Florida and I started finding something I wanted to do. I wanted to be outside. Florida's beautiful. Why be inside and be in air conditioning? You go there to retire. So I went there and I started something I liked, which was a vending business. And I worked for somebody else, and I learned how they did it. And then I said, something, why am I making this guy all the money? I can do it myself. And that's when I started myself. And the wrestling, and once you wrestle, everything else is easy because the discipline you have, there's no you're a fighter, and you fight through the challenges, and you know that you can get to the top no matter what it is. And that's how I got to the top.
It's so interesting. Like, I feel like when you get as far along as you did in the sport of wrestling, like even excelling in a business, it would seem to me be hard to get the same kind of charge out of it. How do you feel about that?
I don't really talk about wrestling at all.
Mm.
When I came to Florida, I was an official, and nobody knew I wrestled. It was funny because I remember telling one guy, he says, "Well, you don't know what you're looking at when I'm officiating." I said, "I think I forgot more wrestling than you know," like to the coach. Like, you know, everybody thinks they know everything about wrestling, especially the guys that never wrestled. They always yell at the referees like, "You know nothing." And I kind of just like, when it's over, it's over. I don't really keep talking about it. This is rare that I'm talking about wrestling
Mm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it's not about me. The next guy is the new and greatest. And you talk to some of these Olympic champs who've been Olympic champs for everybody from a long time ago. Nobody even knows about them except for
Right.
wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody could care. And even the younger wrestlers could care. I go in and teach young kids. They like, what's this guy know? He's old.
Mm.
Right. You're right. I am old, but you don't forget. And, it's like riding a bike. You never forget it,
Mm.
but you're not in the limelight, so they don't listen, basically.
Mm.
That's why I stopped really teaching wrestling. If somebody asks me, I'll help them, but I'm not going to volunteer to help somebody if they're not going to listen anyways.
Right.
So that's why I kind of don't do it. But it's like in business, go find somebody that's doing it and ask them because they're going to tell you how they do it because they want to brag about themselves. And it's easy. They'll teach you and then you go do it. It's that simple, no matter
Mm.
what it is. Find
Mm.
somebody that's good at it. And that's how I got good in wrestling. I found people that were good, show me how to do it, and I'll take it from here. That's what I
Who,
did in business.
like in the ATWA program, in the international style, say in Greco, who was did you have like a mentor in ATWA that was you looked up to that helped you with a lot of?
It was funny because we didn't really have that many guys when we started. It was me, Andy, and a couple other guys, Mike Paquette, Paul Hornback, and Matt Hughes. I think his name was. He was from Fort Plain. We went to these tournaments. Mike Varmette. We went, and and after that, we started. When you have success, people want to be with you. So Joe used to bring in all these young kids, and he let us teach them, and that
Mm-hmm.
was fun because they realize we're doing something here. We need more. We need to get this rolling, and that's how Atwa got big because we were willing to teach the younger kids because it was fun because we were like stars to them. Nobody else could care less, but the young kids did. The Section 2 kids did. They were coming from all over. They were coming from Queensbury, Glens Falls. They were coming from the other side of, all Section 2 would come. And Section 2 wrestling got a lot better because we weren't that good. If you go
Mm-hmm.
to the state championship, you see we finished seventh or something or sixth we thought we were great. We end up seventh as a team, Section 2 team. You say, well, how come that guy didn't? He's not a state champ. He didn't do anything. Like for instance, I was a good wrestler. I go there and I took fifth, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Wow, it must be tough." Yeah, well, it is tough, but you know, we can all do it. They can all win. You'll see a lot of guys breaking through, winning that you know, they're good.
So
So
I remember when I was maybe in 10th grade, Section 2 won the entire state, but it was
absolutely,
Abigail, Feingold Cardi,
that
Arpy
was the
from
best
Saratoga.
best team ever. Best team ever. And it had a lot to do with the Atwood program. A lot of those
Right.
guys were Atwood wrestlers, and
Mm-hmm.
and they were that good. I remember watching that. They actually had it on TV. I was watching it, and I knew that Section 2 could do that, and they did, and now they're always competitive. Now, there's been some
Mm-hmm.
great wrestlers that come out of Section 2 and New York State, you know.
No doubt.
But it's remember, it's only a sport, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Life starts after that if you don't go to college. These kids don't understand. I was talking at the Brockport. I said, listen, you got 4 years here to wrestle. It's really only 1 year because you're only physically competing for one total year as a 4 year start wrestle. What are you going to do after that? Your life starts. You're going to be talking about it for the rest of your life. There was some kids that were going to quit. I was there at one of the practices and I talked to them and I told them, I said, listen, if you quit, you're going to regret it your whole life because when life starts, you'll be in a bar someday saying, God, I should have kept going. I should have did this. Don't be the guy that shoulda, coulda, woulda. Just do it. Get it done. Give it 100%, whether you win or get, just competing. Because when you get out and you're at my age, you're going to wish you were still there.
Mm.
You know, that's my
I,
thing. I
I
tell
was
people the
thinking you
most.
must be happy that you followed through on your senior year.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I could have stopped because I was still wrestling up. Because people don't realize that our season starts international after Division I ends. So everybody's done and ours are just starting. So now I got to start my Greco program. I remember recruiting John Paracella. John, stay a little bit. I want to, and he used to stay there and wrestle with me. And a lot of guys, because they didn't want to do it anymore after going through a full season of college wrestling. Now you want to start again, and it's tougher. Greco and freestyle are tougher because every guy's good, not just there is no bad guys because these are the guys that are still going. So these are all Americans, NCAA champs fighting with each other to be the number one guy. So
So on
it's a tough.
Saturday mornings, you and I talked a little bit. I'm a triathlete, and I run with these guys Saturday mornings, 7:30 every Saturday. One guy is Brian O'Neill. He went to Galway, and he's done, I don't know, 15 Ironmans. And John Paracella. So John has done lots of, Boston marathons. He's fast, sub 3 hours. He did a 5 minute mile at age 50. Just crazy athlete.
Oh yeah,
I bet you I ran with him for 5 years before he told me he made a world team
he
in
was
wrestling.
one of the very first guys from our area to do it.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh yeah, John was the real deal. He really was, and he told you he was like 0-11 as a freshman, right? He never won a
Mm-hmm.
match, and he
Mm-hmm.
could have quit, but he wrestled some great guys, but John was a great performer in competition. In practice, he was terrible. He'd get beat up. You know, he'd get yelled at every day and make us do it more exercises because he would just get beat up and Murray would yell at him. Murray would yell at him to get him going in a good sense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Some people
Yeah.
need to get yelled at. I mean, Murray used to set a camera up in my shark room and count how many takedowns I shot to come back the next day to see how much penalty we had to do because he knew if I shot some takedowns, I made to win the Division I. That wasn't my goal. My goal
Mm.
was to just survive college wrestling, become an All-American, and that was it. It wasn't my goal to be a national champ in Division I. It
Mm.
was my goal to just compete. My goal was to make an Olympic team, which I
Mm-hmm.
did, but I fell short. You know, they changed everything in wrestling. Like right now, they got two third places. Okay, you wrestle, you get first and second, then they got 2/3 and 2/5. If they had that when I was wrestling in '84, I'd have been third
Mm-hmm.
because I took fifth. So I'd have been
Mm-hmm.
one of the third place guys, and I would have had a medal. But just I don't know why they have 2/3. It's kind of ridiculous. Doesn't even make any sense.
I don't understand it. As just a fan, I've never wrestled at that level, obviously, but as a fan, I don't understand it.
Well, they have these qualifying things now. You have to qualify. It's all this crazy stuff. It used to be country send a guy, your best guy, and let's go. Now
Mm-hmm.
you got to qualify. You got guys jumping to different countries so they can qualify.
Mm-hmm.
It's more political. They're all great though, because you got
Mm.
like 10 Russians in there now. You don't know what a guy from Spain could be a Russian. Jumping around. So it
Mm-hmm.
should just be an open tournament, basically. Send the
Right.
top 20,
Mm-hmm.
and let's go. But what do I know? So
So looking back on everything, if I was describing you to a third party who never met you, just looking back on your life, what would you want that person to know about you?
Had a tough growing up, but didn't let that stop me. I picked a path of wrestling and I wanted to get to the top. I achieved that. Even if I didn't get to the top, it was a great ride. I wanted to have something in my life other than I have a family, two kids, a wife. I want to be able to enjoy my life, which means you need money to enjoy life. You have that, it's to give you time. It's not to make you any different of a person, but it gives you freedom and time to do what you want. And I've done that. I give back to not only where I came from, but who helped me along the way. And I've been friends with competitors and people. Just be nice to people because it comes back. Karma gets you. So that's about it for me.
Well, this is just great for me because, when you look up to people when you're a little kid and then you get to, we're kind of like similar age now as we get older. And this is the highlight of my life to interview you. My coach, Greg Burbulis, would always talk about Frank Famiano and, how great he was. And then you wrestled Scott Armour from Galway and you wrestled other good kids, which they were good wrestlers. But compared to you, they weren't. So thank you for your
Yeah.
time. And I'm hoping I see you at the state tournament and who knows, maybe
I'll
at the
be there.
NCAAs. I'm definitely
Absolutely. I'll be there.
I'm gonna look
I,
you up.
I appreciate it. And thank you for this opportunity. And just keep pushing, man. You never know when our ticket's going to get punched. So
Amen.
thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Have a great day today, Frank.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Nice job. If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.